Hello everyone! Today's case takes you to the city of Clinton, a peaceful suburban area in Hinds County, Mississippi, located about 10 miles west of the state capital, Jackson. Clinton is widely known as a safe community where serious crimes are rare. But on a night in early 2019, a quiet suburban home suddenly turned into a horrifying crime scene. Gunshots ripped through the silence, triggering a tense 12-hour standoff between police and an armed barricaded suspect. Behind that closed door lay dark secrets. 4 lives had been brutally taken, and 2 terrified children were crying helplessly. This shocking case left the entire community stunned, wondering what could drive an ordinary-seeming man to the brink of committing such a horrific family massacre. Before we uncover the answers, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss other gripping cases on Vietnamese Case Files. Thank you for your support. At 2:30 a.m. on the 16th of February 2019, the stillness of a Clinton neighborhood was shattered by frantic screams and the sound of gunfire. Minutes later, 911 received a report of a domestic disturbance escalating into violence at a residence on Fox Hill Drive in the Huntcliffe subdivision. Officers from the Clinton Police Department were immediately dispatched to the scene. As soon as police vehicles arrived, the situation spiraled out of control. From inside the house, a man suddenly opened fire on the officers, forcing them to take cover and call for reinforcements. Under the barrage of bullets, frontline officers scrambled to secure themselves and establish a perimeter. A quick assessment suggested that multiple people might be held hostage inside. The urgent situation was reported to command staff, and SWAT along with supporting units were mobilized to handle the armed hostage scenario. Within minutes, more than 50 police vehicles, ambulances, and SWAT units surrounded the home before dawn. Loudspeakers blared instructions telling residents to stay indoors or evacuate to a safer location. Inside the house, no one knew exactly how many people were present or what condition they were in, except the armed suspect. The tense standoff dragged on for 12 hours as observation robots and crisis negotiators were deployed to communicate with the agitated man. But all they received were hostile refusals, along with confirmation that 2 young children were still inside. After negotiation attempts, the 2 children were eventually released unharmed, giving SWAT the opening to move in since the suspect showed no signs of surrendering. A sniper took position and was authorized to neutralize the target before the tactical team breached the house. With the situation finally contained, officers entered to a horrifying sight. The home was in disarray, blood splattered across the floor, and walls riddled with bullet holes under the harsh artificial light. 4 bodies were found scattered in different rooms. The victims, 3 women and 1 man, were all deceased before officers reached them. Initial observations offered clear clues. Each victim had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, indicating extreme brutality and intent. A semi-automatic 9mm handgun was found near the downed suspect, likely the murder weapon. These details led investigators to suspect an exceptionally violent family massacre. A new question quickly arose. If the perpetrator had killed his entire family, what was his motive? At first, the crime scene offered investigators only cold numbers: 4 bodies, 3 women, and 1 man found lifeless inside the house. They could not immediately determine who was who, as this Asian family had no close relatives or neighbors nearby who could identify them on the spot. In this small town, the Vietnamese community was not large, and the family kept a low profile, so confirming their identities posed initial difficulties. Police secured the home and carefully collected every possible identifying clue, from IDs found in the victims' purses to name plaques on family photos hanging on the walls. A crucial lead emerged when investigators examined the wedding photos and family portraits displayed in the living room. One showed a Vietnamese couple smiling on their wedding day, and another depicted them with 2 young girls. Comparing these images with information on the suspect's Facebook page, police determined that the groom in the wedding photo was Lenam, the homeowner, and the man shot by police while the bride's face matched one of the deceased women. From this, police formed the hypothesis that the victims were all members of Nam's family, possibly his wife, sister-in-law, relatives, or mother-in-law. These assumptions needed formal verification through relatives or official documents. During the examination, forensic teams also collected the victims' fingerprints and compared them to databases and the documents recovered. Just one day later, on Sunday, February 17, the Hinds County Medical Examiner completed the autopsies and officially released the victims' identities. According to the report, the 4 victims were Lan Thi Mai Van 30, Le Thi Mai Van 28, Phung Min Le 28, and Cho Thi Van 65. Police immediately cross-checked these names with information linked to Lanam. The results matched the initial hypothesis perfectly. Lan Thi Mai Van was Nam's wife, Le Thi Mai Van was his sister-in-law, Phung Min Le was the fiancé of the younger sister, and Cho Thi Van, age 65, was a babysitter and longtime family acquaintance. With the victims' identities confirmed, the investigation moved into the next phase. That phase was to understand the stories behind each victim and identify what circumstances led to the tragedy. Lan Thi Mai Van 30 Nam's wife was described as a gentle, family-oriented Vietnamese woman. She married Lanam in 2013 and had 2 young daughters, ages 5 and 2. She and her husband built a small nail salon named Envy Nail in Hazelhurst. As the eldest sibling in her family, Lan was trusted by relatives and often served as the bridge, helping family members reunite in the United States. Customers at Envy Nail adored her, describing her as warm, caring, and making everyone feel at home. No one could have imagined that this cheerful woman would meet such a tragic end at the hands of her own husband. Next was Le Thi Mai Van, Lan's younger sister, the youngest of the 3 female victims and a key figure connecting everyone present that day. From here on, we will refer to the sisters simply as Lan and Lei for clarity. At 28, Lei was preparing for a major milestone in her life, marriage. She had just become engaged to her longtime boyfriend Phung Min Le and planned to hold the wedding in 2019. She was described as kind, somewhat quiet, had immigrated through family sponsorship, and worked alongside her sister at the nail salon. Lei had a very good relationship with her brother-in-law, Le Nam. She called him An, showing respect as one would toward an elder brother. That made her death especially heartbreaking. Her passing just before her wedding added another layer of tragedy. She and her fiancé had not even taken official wedding photos. Their engagement picture had to be used as her memorial portrait at the community vigil. The only male victim was Phung Min Le, 28 Le's fiancé. Known affectionately as Joey, he was a Vietnamese-American with a promising career at 28. At the time of the killings, Phung Min Le was a medical resident specializing in internal medicine at a hospital in Louisiana. He had been in a long-term, loving relationship with Le, supported wholeheartedly by both families. That fateful weekend, Phung drove from Louisiana to Mississippi to visit his fiancée and her family. No one knew it would be the last trip of his life. Those who knew him described him as intelligent, gentle, and deeply devoted to Le. The fact that a promising young doctor was killed in a domestic violence massacre left the public especially shaken. Phung Min Le had no blood relation to Le Nam, yet he was the only male victim. This led to many theories. Perhaps he tried to protect his fiancée and her family during the conflict and was killed in the process? Regardless of the exact cause, the death of Phung Min Le was a tremendous loss, not only to his family, but also to the medical community he worked in. And the final victim, also the oldest, Cho Thi Van, around 65 years old, was a trusted family acquaintance from Vietnam. She had lived in the United States for many years and was highly trusted by the Lanam family. She often cared for the 2 young daughters while the couple worked at the nail salon. Neighbors saw her daily, but rarely interacted with her due to the language barrier. Cho Thi Van spoke almost no English. At her age, she should have been enjoying a peaceful retirement, yet she lost her life tragically in a domestic violence incident in a foreign land. 4 people with 4 different life stories, yet their fates became intertwined on one horrific night. They all shared one thing in common. They were kind people, loved by friends and by the Vietnamese community. Their relationship with the perpetrator, Lanam, was clear they were his family and close loved ones. This only deepened the mystery. What motive could drive Lanam to kill those dearest to him? To answer that question, investigators had to look closely at Lanam himself and the events leading up to the massacre. What police and the media later discovered about Lanam was completely opposite to the terrifying image he projected that morning. Born in 1984, Lanam was originally from the fishing village of An Bang in Vinh, and Commune Phu Vang District, Thua Thien, Hue Province, today part of Hue City. Many people from An Bang later immigrated to the United States and built new lives there, including Nam's family. According to neighbors, Nam often said his family moved from a bigger city to Clinton around the early 2010s. Nam had a completely clean record, no criminal history, and held a stable job managing the nail salon with his wife. Their household situation was financially comfortable, which was why Nam and Lan were able to bring Lan's younger sister, Lei and Cho Thi Van, to the US to live with them shortly afterward. In the eyes of those around him, Nam was a devoted family man, gentle, polite, and friendly. He often bought pastries and coffee for customers as a gesture of hospitality. Within the Vietnamese friend circle, Nam had no bad reputation. He was known to occasionally help others. His medical records showed no sign of mental instability. He lived a healthy lifestyle, did not use illicit substances, and only drank occasionally for social or business purposes. So what could push a man who seemed to embody the ideal husband to kill the very people he loved? Immediately after the standoff ended, the Clinton Police Department, in coordination with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, launched a full-scale investigation. Although Lanam had been shot and killed at the scene, the investigation remained crucial to reconstruct the incident, determine his actions, and uncover the motive behind the massacre. The home on Fox Hill Drive became the center of an extensive forensic operation lasting several days, with crime scene technicians moving in and out continuously to collect evidence. Investigators initially determined that this was a brutal domestic violence incident that escalated into a hostage situation. There were no signs of an outside intruder. All evidence pointed to the homeowner, Lenam, as the primary suspect. The chaotic scene, with numerous shell casings found around the bodies, helped investigators map out the shooting positions and bullet trajectories. All victims had been shot at close range, indicating that the perpetrator fired directly and decisively. The TV and lights were still on, and dishes remained on the dining table, signs that everyday life had been abruptly interrupted. There was no suicide note or written document left behind, nor any evidence of drug use, aside from a few empty beer cans near where Nam barricaded himself. These details suggested the crime may not have been premeditated, but instead triggered by sudden rage or emotional agitation. Forensic results indicated that the victims died around the same time between midnight and early morning on February 16, matching the time frame when police first received the emergency call. The scene showed no signs of prolonged struggle, implying that the victims were likely taken by surprise and had no chance to defend themselves. The forensic team also confirmed that all shell casings came from Nam's 9mm handgun, conclusively identifying him as the sole perpetrator with no accomplices. Alongside this, police extracted body cam footage from SWAT officers involved in the standoff. The footage documented parts of the tense 12-hour confrontation. Notably, when SWAT deployed a surveillance robot inside Lanam's home, it recorded a chilling scene. The suspect sitting calmly on the living room floor near a window, cigarette in hand, weapon at his feet, and 4 lifeless bodies nearby. According to the police report, Lanam even raised his middle finger at the robot, continuing to provoke law enforcement. Meanwhile, officers began interviewing neighbors. One neighbor, Al Morrison, provided a crucial lead. He said police had visited the home several times before to resolve disputes, suggesting that family conflict had been ongoing. His testimony aligned with police records. There had been at least 2 previous 911 calls to this address involving marital arguments and domestic disturbances. Although none were severe at the time, they showed the presence of long-standing tension in the household. This may be the key to understanding the motive. Could the massacre have been the breaking point of a prolonged string of domestic conflicts? Following that, due to the extreme severity of the case, the FBI also joined to support the investigation, particularly in criminal behavior analysis. Experts reviewed Lanam's behavioral patterns and classified the case as a family annihilator scenario, a term for perpetrators, typically middle-aged men, who kill their entire families, often with histories of controlling behavior or domestic violence. In many such cases, the perpetrators experience psychological pressure or life disruptions that trigger an explosive outburst. Comparing this pattern with Lanam, although he had no major criminal history, the prior police visits reflected early signs of violence. This assessment placed the motive within the broader context that Lanam may have been someone skilled at hiding his true emotions, outwardly friendly, helpful, and sociable, but harboring dark and distorted thoughts. When these internal tensions reached a breaking point, he erupted and carried out the violent acts. This theory seemed plausible, but police still could not determine an exact motive. Marital conflict, jealousy, or financial pressure all remained unclear because the perpetrator was killed without leaving any explanation. To clarify further, the investigation shifted toward reviewing the family's financial situation and found that the nail salon was stable, with no significant debt. Regarding the marital situation, friends and relatives consistently stated that Lanam deeply loved his wife and children, and that Lon had shown no signs of wanting a divorce. After ruling out all other possibilities, investigators were left with one remaining explanation. Nam may have felt increasingly uncomfortable with his wife's extended family living in the same home, leading to prolonged tension. However, with all individuals directly involved in the case deceased, this hypothesis can never be fully confirmed. Although the exact motive could not be clearly established, investigators, through evidence collection and assistance from criminal psychology experts, were able to partially reconstruct the events leading up to the massacre. On the evening of Friday, the 15th of February 2019, after closing the Envy Nail Salon, the family Lanam, his wife Lan, his sister-in-law Lei, her fiancé Phung Min Lei, and Cho Thi Van all returned to their home in Clinton. They shared a warm early-year family dinner, chatting happily. Only Lanam remained unusually quiet, something dark slowly rising within him. Near midnight, Cho Thi Van put the two young girls to bed. In the living room, the adults continued talking until about 2 a.m., when an argument erupted. Years of suppressed anger inside Nam exploded. He reached for his 9mm handgun and began a brutal rampage. The first shot struck his wife at close range in the living room. Lan collapsed to the floor, blood soaking through her nightgown. Le screamed in terror. Phung Min Le rushed forward to stop his future brother-in-law, desperately trying to calm him, but was shot twice in succession. Seeing the two people she loved fall to the floor, Lei begged for mercy, but Nam continued pulling the trigger. In less than a minute, 3 beloved family members lay dead. The air grew thick with the smell of gunpowder. At that moment, Cho Thi Van rushed out of the children's bedroom, horrified by the scene. She tried to retreat to protect the two girls, but she too could not escape Nam's frenzy. Everything happened too fast under the cold-blooded rage of the gunman. Only when his two daughters woke up crying did Lanam momentarily regain control, but he could not face the horror he had created. The clock showed 2:30 a.m., and police were already arriving in response to an emergency call. One officer approached the door and asked about the situation inside. Nam slipped back into instability, pointed his weapon at the officers, and fired, forcing them to retreat, take cover, and call for backup. Nam slammed the door shut, locked it, pulled the curtains closed, and entered full barricade mode. He reloaded his gun and moved his daughters to a safer spot inside the house. Nam knew he could not escape, but lacked the courage to end his own life, choosing instead to go down in a violent standoff. Outside, reinforcements arrived. Clinton police were joined by the Hinds County Sheriff's Office and the Mississippi Highway Patrol SWAT team. The neighborhood was locked down, and curious residents were pushed back for safety. As dawn approached, the flashing blue and red lights of dozens of police vehicles turned quiet Fox Hill Drive into a scene resembling a war zone. Many later said they had never seen anything like it in their lives. Around 5 a.m., after police established their formation, a crisis negotiator was brought in to initiate contact with Nam, but he refused, forbidding police from entering. The negotiator attempted to prolong conversation in hopes of persuading him to release the hostages and surrender, as at this point, no one yet knew the condition of the 4 people inside. Nam did not hide anything, bluntly stating that the victims were no longer breathing. This admission left the police momentarily stunned. They shifted strategy, focusing on negotiating the release of the 2 girls and preparing for a tactical breach. The phone rang repeatedly as both sides continued negotiating. By around 10 a.m., seeing his daughters frightened and hungry, Nam finally softened. He demanded that police retreat to a distance and then slowly walked his 2 daughters toward the door. By 11 a.m., after cautiously surveying the surroundings, Lanam cracked the door open and allowed his 2 daughters to step outside and run toward police. The sight of the children being rescued safely brought a collective sigh of relief. They were immediately taken to a secure location for medical evaluation. Fortunately, both girls were only traumatized and had no physical injuries. Now, inside the home, only Lanam and the 4 lifeless bodies remained. Police were eager to breach, but they knew Nam was still armed. Negotiators continued urging him to surrender, but Nam was determined to fight until the end. After another hour passed, the incident commander authorized stronger tactics. First, they negotiated to send in the surveillance robot. The footage transmitted from inside left many officers chilled. Near the bodies, the rescue team saw Lay Nam sitting in the middle of the room, raising his middle finger tauntingly and even firing shots at the robot, causing the camera feed to cut off. That action was the final straw. The patience afforded to the suspect had run out, and the rescue team was forced to implement the final plan: neutralize the gunman. As a last warning, they deployed tear gas. If Nam refused to surrender, he would expose his position. At 12:30 p.m., SWAT officers were ordered to prepare for a full breach. A sniper was positioned at an optimal angle, awaiting the command. And at the moment Lay Nam moved toward the window to assess the situation, a single shot rang out. The sniper had taken the shot, penetrating the window and striking Nam in the chest, immediately incapacitating him. Orders were shouted, and SWAT teams stormed the house from 2 directions, one group breaking through the front door, the other entering through a window. They quickly scanned the scene, restrained the wounded Nam, and checked if anyone inside was still alive. Once the all-clear signal was given, medical teams and additional officers entered. After 12 exhausting hours, the intense standoff was finally over. Lanam was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but despite doctors' efforts, he succumbed to blood loss. With the sole suspect dead, the case closed without any courtroom trial and without any clear explanation for what triggered the tragedy. It left the public deeply haunted. At the time, the story drew significant media attention because it involved not only multiple fatalities, but also an immigrant Vietnamese family, a perspective rarely featured in American headlines. On television, images of the bullet-riddled home, the overturned furniture, and the memorial flowers and candles placed outside stirred emotional reactions across the community. This incident also left behind profound lessons. Above all, it highlighted the urgent issue of domestic violence, a crisis that can occur anywhere behind the closed doors of homes that appear peaceful from the outside. For many Vietnamese families who follow the belief, show the good, hide the bad, perhaps the signs of conflict and violence between Lanam and his family had surfaced long before, but were concealed out of pride, fear for the children, or worry for their reputation until the tragedy finally erupted. And what about you? How do you feel about this case? What could have driven Lay Nam to turn so violently against his own family? Share your thoughts with Vietnamese Case Files in the comments below. And if you found today's story compelling, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to Vietnamese Case Files so you won't miss other gripping true crime stories in the future. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.